Imagine waking up in the middle of the night after a dream so real that your heart is still racing. You try to understand if it was just a creation of your mind, or if, in some inexplicable way, you really were somewhere else. A young man called Miguel, for example, dreamt that he was walking through an ancient city full of details he had never seen before. Days later, while watching a documentary, he recognized that very place, a historic city in the Middle East that he had never visited or even knew the name of. How is it possible to dream about something we've never consciously experienced? This kind of experience is not uncommon. Millions of people around the world report dreams that defy logic and question the limits of what we mean by reality. Now answer honestly, what do you believe happens to your consciousness when you sleep? Most people would say that the brain switches off or just rests. But modern science and human experience suggest something much deeper. During sleep, especially in the REM phase, that of the most intense dreams, certain areas of the brain become even more active than when we are awake. While the body rests, the mind ventures into surreal landscapes, relives distorted memories, and creates encounters that seem more real than reality itself. According to a study by the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, around 95% of dreams are forgotten within the first few minutes of waking up. But the 5% that we do remember often carry intense meanings and emotions, as if they were messages coming from somewhere beyond our rational understanding. What if these experiences weren't just creations of the brain, but accesses to other forms of perception? Neuroscientist Rick Strassman, known for his studies on the substance DMT, also called the spirit molecule, has proposed that the brain may naturally release this substance during deep sleep, especially in the REM phase. DMT is known to induce intense visions, a sense of dislocation from reality, and even near-death experiences. If it really is produced while we sleep, this could explain why some dreams feel like portals to other worlds, where time, space, and even logic cease to function as we know them. When we sleep, reality as we know it begins to fade into silence. External sounds fade away, the body's gravity seems to disappear, and without us realizing it, we enter a universe where time, logic, and space work under new rules. It is at this point that the big question arises. If the body is still, what is moving? The answer lies in consciousness, that invisible but constant presence that accompanies us even when the rational mind is silent. And it is precisely during sleep that consciousness seems to take on an even more intriguing role. It expands, transcends the limits of the physical body, and interacts with dimensions that we have yet to fully explain. Science already knows that during sleep, especially in the REM, rapid eye movement phase, the brain not only continues to function, it enters a state of intense activity. Electroencephalogram tests show that regions such as the limbic system, responsible for emotions, and the visual cortex, linked to the formation of images, are extremely activated. On the other hand, the prefrontal lobe, which regulates logic, judgment, and linear thinking, reduces its activity considerably. This combination creates an ideal scenario for non-linear mental experiences, such as vivid dreams, floating sensations, temporal fragmentation, and perceptions of alternative realities. But what does this have to do with the transcendence of consciousness? Everything. When the rational part slows down and the emotional and sensory take over, we make room for a deeper perception, not just of ourselves, but of what exists beyond our ordinary reality. A study published in 2021 by the Journal of Neuroscience showed that patients in a state of deep REM sleep exhibited increased brain connectivity between areas that rarely interact when we are awake. This means that the brain creates unusual shortcuts that can allow connections between memories, emotions, and even sensory experiences that did not occur in the physical world, which can be interpreted by many as a form of expanded consciousness. This theory is echoed in various spiritual traditions around the world. In Hindu philosophy, sleep is considered one of the states in which the Atman, the soul or true essence, can temporarily free itself from the prison of the body. In shamanism, dreams are believed to be channels for the spirit to explore other dimensions and receive messages from the universe. Even in modern spiritualism, there are those who argue that while we sleep, our consciousness partially detaches itself from the body and accesses spiritual realities. The curious thing is that, even without scientific consensus, all these views point to the same phenomenon. Sleep is not a simple physiological pause. It is an opportunity for transcendence. And this hypothesis gains even more strength when we consider the role of the substance DMT, dimethyltryptamine. Recent studies, such as those conducted by Dr. Jimo Borjigin of the University of Michigan in 2019, have identified the presence of DMT in the brains of living mammals, especially during altered states of consciousness, such as deep sleep. This suggests that the brain, through mechanisms that are still poorly understood, can release this substance naturally, which would explain the intense visionary experiences that many describe during dreams. DMT, when administered externally, causes sensations of mind expansion, ego dissolution, and entry into other realities. If the brain really does produce DMT during sleep, then perhaps our nights hide a chemical and spiritual journey not yet fully revealed. So when we talk about consciousness and transcendence, we're not just dealing with metaphors or mystical beliefs. We are dealing with data, observations, and real human experiences that defy the limits of what current science can measure. Sleep, in this context, is not just rest. It is a process where consciousness, freed from the bonds of logic and physical gravity, can transform itself, move, and even find answers that in the waking state we are unable to reach. And the more we understand this, the more we realize that sleep is less an end to the day and more an opening to what exists beyond visible reality. While the body rests in silence, dreams enter the scene as the protagonists of a parallel reality. Many see them as simple chemical reactions or fragments of the unconscious, but what if they are much more than that? What if dreams are actually portals? Portals capable of transporting us to dimensions that coexist with our own, but which can only be accessed when the mind is free from the limitations of wakefulness. This concept, although it sounds like science fiction, is the subject of serious debate in areas ranging from neuroscience to ancient spirituality. Let's break it down. During the REM phase of sleep, which occurs several times during the night, the brain enters a state of hyperactivity. Contrary to what many people think, it doesn't rest, but operates in an intense and profoundly creative way. Regions responsible for visual memory, emotions, and sensations light up like illuminated cities, while more critical and analytical areas, such as the prefrontal cortex, reduce their influence. This change of command creates the perfect environment for the mind to explore unconventional territories. This is when vivid, complex, and even inexplicable dreams arise. But what's so special about that? The answer lies in human experience. We've all had dreams that seemed more real than everyday life. Intense colors, crystal clear sounds, deep conversations with strangers, and scenery that we've never seen but recognize instinctively. Where does all this come from? The most common explanation is that these elements are collages from the subconscious, but some theories suggest something bolder, that we are, in fact, accessing parallel realities. In theoretical physics, Hugh Everett's many worlds interpretation proposes that for every decision we make, a new reality is formed. In other words, we would live in only one of infinite possible versions of the universe. If this is true, and even though it is a hypothesis that has yet to be proven, dreams could be the key to experiencing these other versions, as if our consciousness were temporarily tuned into a parallel frequency. In ancient spiritual traditions, this thought already existed, albeit in a different language. The indigenous peoples of South America, for example, see dreams as journeys of the soul. For them, to dream is to visit the world of the spirit, where lessons are learned and missions revealed. In ancient Egypt, there were temples dedicated exclusively to the interpretation of dreams, which were considered messages from the gods. In both views, dreams are not mere mental creations, but channels of communication with something beyond logical comprehension. Modern science, although still cautious, has explored these limits. An experiment carried out in 2020 and published in the journal Current Biology revealed that it is possible to establish communication with people who are dreaming. Participants trained in lucid dreaming answered simple questions with eye or muscle movements, proving that the conscious mind can be active and aware during the dream. This kind of control and perception within the dream world raises a fascinating question. If we can consciously perceive and interact during a dream, wouldn't that be evidence that we are in an environment just as real as the waking state? This is where dreams as portals gain strength as a concept, because they're not just about seeing things, but about living experiences that often leave an emotional mark, alter behavior, and even change life paths. There are reports of people receiving creative ideas, personal revelations, and even important decisions through dreams. If they were just distortions of reality, why would they be so impactful? Perhaps because in those moments we are actually accessing something greater, a layer of reality that exists beyond the reach of our usual senses. Dreams may not be just a reflection of the mind, but a bridge. A bridge that connects what we are while awake to what we could be in other possibilities of existence. Each night, this silent crossing can lead us to experiences that transcend time, logic, and even the boundaries of our own identity. If dreams really are portals, the question remains, how many realities have you visited without even realizing it? Have you ever had the feeling that a dream lasted hours, maybe even days, but when you woke up, you realized that only a few minutes had passed? This kind of experience is more common than you might think and raises an intriguing question. Is time, as we know it, really fixed? Or is it just a construct of the mind, shaped by our consciousness in different states? When we enter the world of dreams, it's as if a new temporal logic reveals itself, a fluid, mutable logic where the clock simply no longer has any authority. In the waking state, our perception of time is linear. One second comes after another, events follow a predictable sequence, and the present always seems to slip away into the past. But during sleep, especially in the deeper phases such as REM, this linearity breaks down. We can live a complete narrative with a beginning, middle, and end in a matter of seconds, or we can relive a single moment for an indefinite period of time without any awareness of the chronological passage. Neuroscience already recognizes that the perception of time in dreams does not follow the same mechanisms we use when we are awake. A study by the University of Freiburg, published in 2014, observed that lucid dreams, those in which the dreamer knows they are dreaming, have a perception of time that can be accelerated or decelerated, depending on the mental activity experienced in the dream. This malleability of time is directly linked to the way the brain processes information while we sleep. During dreams, there isn't the same kind of sensory gauging that we have when we're awake. There are no clocks, sunlight, or daily routines to give us a sense of objective time. What does exist are internal events, images, sounds, emotions, which the brain organizes based on meanings, not seconds or minutes. This makes the temporal experience of dreams deeply subjective. A minute in a dream can contain an avalanche of events, while an hour can be perceived as an empty instant. It's as if we were in a movie theater where the film is edited in real time. by consciousness itself without fixed rules. This idea is also echoed in philosophical and spiritual traditions. In various Eastern cultures, time is seen not as a line, but as a circle, or even as an illusion necessary to give order to the chaos of existence. The Indian philosopher Jiddu Krishnamurti said that psychological time is a creation of the mind, and in dreams, we see this clearly. The emotions we experience, even if they are not linked to real events, imprint themselves on our memory as if they were authentic experiences. How many times have we woken up shaken by something that didn't happen? For the brain, it was real. The emotional charge is processed in the same way as a physical event. This shows that, for the mind, the distinction between real time and imagined time is often irrelevant. Another clue to the illusion of time during sleep lies in the phenomenon of mental acceleration. During REM sleep, our brains can process information up to 20 times faster than in a conscious state, according to studies by the Max Planck Institute for Cognitive Sciences. This means that even in a few minutes of sleep, the brain can generate a massive amount of dream content. This reinforces the feeling that we live a lot in a short time, further distorting the notion of chronology. Finally, this disconnection between physical time and experiential time leads us to a deeper reflection. If our consciousness is capable of shaping the perception of time, is time a universal constant, or just a sensory tool useful only while we are awake? Perhaps in dreams, what we experience is a truth closer to the essential nature of the mind, a space where the now can contain the past, the future, and everything in between, like a living memory in the form of a journey. If time is not fixed, then our dreams can be windows into what is timeless. And in that case, dreaming wouldn't just be living. It would be crossing time with the soul. For centuries, science and spirituality have walked parallel paths, often seen as opposites. On the one hand, science sought proof, measurements, and rational explanations. On the other, spirituality explored the invisible, the intuitive, the sacred. But in recent decades, these two apparently distinct worlds have begun to draw closer together, as if they were destined to meet at a common point: consciousness. And when it comes to sleep and dreams, this connection becomes even more evident. After all, what could unite mystical nocturnal experiences with laboratory studies and brain electrodes? The answer may lie at the point where the inexplicable meets the measurable, a territory where the invisible begins to be translated into data. Let's start with one of the main elements supporting this convergence: the brain's natural production of DMT. Dimethyltryptamine, a substance known for causing deep states of altered consciousness, has been used in shamanic contexts for centuries, such as in ayahuasca rituals used by Amazonian tribes. However, in 2019, researchers from the University of Michigan published an unprecedented study that detected DMT being produced endogenously in the brains of living mammals, including during sleep. This has brought a new scientific look to a compound that until now was only seen as an external psychedelic. The possibility that the human brain releases this substance during REM sleep suggests that states of consciousness similar to those described in mystical experiences can occur naturally, without any external stimulus. But this goes beyond chemistry. Experiments with lucid dreams, where the individual is aware that they are dreaming, show that it is even possible to establish communication during these states. In 2021, an international team of scientists managed to interact with lucid dreamers in real time while they were asleep, through eye signals and facial muscle contractions. These studies, published in the journal Current Biology, challenged the idea that consciousness switches off when sleeping. On the contrary, it can remain active, creative, and receptive, which is very close to what spiritual traditions have always advocated, that the mind, during sleep, can access higher levels of perception and knowledge. Quantum physics is also beginning to touch on territory that was previously exclusive to spirituality. Theories such as the multiverse or non-locality indicate that particles can exist in multiple states simultaneously, or that events at one point in space can instantaneously affect another far away. These concepts are paralleled by spiritual visions that speak of the interconnectedness of all things, the possibility of multiple realities, and consciousness as a universal force. Although science is still treading cautiously in this field, many contemporary scientists recognize that there are phenomena such as the near-death experience, precognitive dreams, and the feeling of oneness with the universe that cannot yet be fully explained by physiology. And this is where spirituality offers valuable clues. In several ancient traditions, sleep is seen as a time when the soul temporarily detaches itself from the physical body. In spiritualism, for example, it is believed that during deep sleep, the consciousness can visit other planes, reunite with deceased loved ones, or participate in learning on the spiritual plane. In Tibetan Buddhism, there is the yoga of dreams, an ancient practice that teaches the practitioner to remain conscious during sleep as a way of awakening the true nature of the mind, a mind that is neither born nor dies, but only manifests on different planes of existence. Gradually, modern science is opening up to these possibilities, seeking to understand not only what happens, but why and how these experiences affect us so profoundly. Spirituality, on the other hand, finds in science an ally to validate what it has already sensed for millennia. The point of convergence between these two universes may not be a final answer, but a new type of question. What if sleep is not just a biological state, but a bridge between what we can prove and what we still need to feel? In this place between data and intuitions, a new understanding is born, where science and spirituality are not excluded, but complement each other, revealing the mystery of human consciousness together. Perhaps what you've discovered here is just the beginning of a new way of looking at what happens every night while your body rests. Sleep, often treated as a simple biological necessity, has turned out to be much more than that. It is a complex process where the mind disconnects from physical reality and dives into states of consciousness that science is only just beginning to understand. We're not talking about distant theories or vague concepts. We're talking about facts observed in the laboratory, recorded brain patterns, substances produced by the brain itself, and human experiences reported in all cultures and eras. We know, for example, that during REM sleep, the brain reaches levels of activity as high as, or even higher than, when we are awake. We know that substances such as DMT, associated with states of altered consciousness, are produced naturally by the body during this period. Recent studies show that it is possible to interact with lucid dreamers in real time, proving that the mind is still present, active, and able to communicate even while the body sleeps. These data are not beliefs. They are registered experiments, peer-reviewed and published by respected universities. On the other hand, reports of out-of-body experiences, precognitive dreams, a sense of distorted time, and encounters with parallel realities can no longer be dismissed as mere imagination. When millions of people in different parts of the world describe similar sensations, something has to be considered. There may not yet be a definitive explanation, but the repetition of phenomena points to a pattern. And this pattern raises a new possibility. That dreams are not just internal projections, but connections with layers of reality that we have not yet been able to fully access in a conscious state. The line between science and spirituality is becoming increasingly blurred. And in this shared territory, a new way of understanding the role of consciousness is beginning to emerge, not as something that shuts down when you sleep, but as an active, exploratory, and perhaps even interdimensional force. It doesn't matter what your belief or background, the data is there, and the human experience speaks for itself. Sleep is more than rest. It's a process of mental, emotional, and perhaps even spiritual reorganization. Now that you know this, the next time you close your eyes to go to sleep, you might realize that you're not simply turning off. You could be embarking on a new journey, one that doesn't require a suitcase or a passport, just the courage to accept that while your body sleeps, your mind could be going much, much further. Now it's up to you. If this content made sense, don't stop here. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any content. Now watch this next video, where I show you another essential step to change your reality.